Shout out to USARK and all USARK members. If you don't know what USARK is, don't be ashamed. Just go ahead and click the third link in the description below. See what USARK is all about, okay? You never know when legislations are going to hit your backyard, so that's why it's very important to consider becoming a USARK member today. These numbers really do matter, and they look at it for consideration when it comes to battling legislation. So first and foremost, thank you, Phil Goss. Thank you to anybody out there who partners up and volunteers with USARK organization. Thank you for anyone out there who's a USARK member. And if you can't become a USARK member today, please talk about it on your platforms. Let your neighbors know, let all your pet stores know what USARK is here for, and it's here to fight for our animal rights. Thank you to every USARK member and USARK supporter out there. True.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good.
You ready for do more in the future? Trap Talk podcasts?
Yes.
Man.
Only Trap Talk. Exclusive.
Yes,
Exclusive. Oh.
So stop calling us.
Scrub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the crop, God love it or not. I'm hot from the hop to the scrub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the scrub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the scrub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the scrub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with everybody, we do it. Everybody, we do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Scrub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the scrub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the scrub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the scrub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up.
Live and direct, episode 585, Reptile Super Show, prediction, expectations, Stephen Kush
Good evening, everybody.
in the building. What's up, dude?
How's it going, man? Long ass drive today, but glad we made it.
Yeah, shout out to you and Brooke for doing quite the mission all the way to San Diego.
Yes, yes, indeed.
But you're here for a reason.
We are. We were here for one reason.
The Reptile Super Show that is going down this weekend, okay? And it's popping, guys. Listen, first and foremost, my condolences and my
Absolutely.
thoughts, my prayers go out to anybody affected in the LA fires. Man, I've been thinking about you guys a lot. So if you were a part of that disaster, I'm so sorry and thinking about you guys. But with that being said, Pomona Reptile Super Show is still happening. The show is a good hour east of the fires, and the fires are about west towards the water. So it's still happening at the Fairplex, Pomona Fairplex. I do know there were some questions about that, because if you look, it says Pomona is an evacuation center.
Yeah.
But Pomona is like 500 acres. So what
It's
it
a big
really
center,
is,
yeah.
it's mainly an evacuation center for farm animals and like horses and stuff like that. So definitely don't be alarmed as far as anyone who's worried about the Reptile Super Show happening or not happening. It's happening. Okay, it's on and cracking. Things are already being put up as far as inside the show, and it's going to be a good time. So how do you feel about it, man? The Reptile Super Show.
Yeah, I'm excited. Last year at the show was awesome. I'm glad to be able to be back out here, promote it ahead of time, really kind of try to get the word out there. I'm excited to see a lot of people this weekend who, frankly, we get to see once or twice a year. So it's going to be an awesome time.
I like that the Reptile Super Show is like almost like a home show of yours now. Like you don't miss Super Shows.
Not anymore. No, definitely not.
Except-
Definitely not. Now that the location has been changed, the home show has been changed too.
Yeah. And by the way, if anyone's excited about Steven being at the Reptile Super Show, a lot of it has to do with because he stays with me. So if it wasn't for that, guys, just saying, Steven probably wouldn't be. I'm just kidding.
no, but
I just want props.
makes it a lot more possible.
Even though I
Yeah,
get so much props, I want more props. You know,
all the props.
Yeah, all the props.
I owe it all to MJ.
But dude, no, listen, seriousness. Reptile Super Show, like I don't know. It's the only thing I have expectation wise is having a good time seeing people.
Yeah.
You know, but I want to get your mindset when it comes to vending. Because at the end of the day, like it's not going to hurt to leave with less reptiles, right? I mean, that's the goal is to come.
Sure, absolutely.
Right? But like, how do you not let it be something that puts pressure on you, Steven? Because I feel like when you put pressure on you, it can show and you're not having a good time. So what's your advice for anyone out there who's going to be maybe vending this weekend, who's like pressured to make money and they're like, oh my God, especially if they're affected in the fires.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what's happening, you know? So let's talk about
Well,
that.
I mean, honestly, I think with the current day and age of the reptile industry, with it being almost entirely an online business, you kind of have to just treat these weekends, if you want to look at it from a purely business standpoint, as like a marketing expense, more or less.
Right.
You know, the odds of selling nothing at a reptile show these days are a lot higher than they were 5, 6, 7 years ago, just because this is not how the business is run primarily anymore. So, you know, I think the best way to enjoy a show if you're vending is expect nothing, so that anything on top of it is just a nice added bonus. You know, I guess depending on who you are in your situation, like for me, for instance, you know, I try to do whatever I can to cut expenses down here and there, try to make it so that my overhead for the trip is as minimal as it possibly can be, so that if I do make a good sale at the show, then it really covers that expense. You know, it covers my time, makes it really worthwhile. But then I really think that the experience comes down to what you were saying, the people. That's what you really need to be there for. If you're not going to a reptile show to see friends, to make new friends, to make connections, then you're not really going for the right reason. That is really the purpose of the shows these days.
Yeah, and you know, the one thing I've noticed, especially about Reptile Super Show, you see a lot of the same faces. Like you see a lot of the same people coming, looking at your table. So I always, first and foremost, if somebody is interested in buying a snake, I feel like, all right, well, that's a good seed to plant right then and there.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
even if they don't buy anything right then and there, because you don't even know what their life situation is. Maybe they have money, but they don't live in the right place. Maybe their money situation is not good. But when things do align for people who are interested and they come by and they notice you're always there and they like your stuff, dude, that's throughout time, that clientele just starts stacking.
Yeah. And I think especially for anybody who has any sort of kind of off the beaten path species, like for me, particularly with the scrub pythons, you know, people who are interested in scrub pythons, or for you, like the tree monitors or emeralds or something like that, they might admire them online, see what you're doing, but still have some hesitation about taking the dive with them. So seeing those animals in person could be the factor that pushes it over the edge of like, okay, this is something I definitely need to do. They might not buy that animal right there and then. 6 months later, a year later, a year and a half later, that could be a customer that you just gained by being present at the show and showing off your animals, not with just the sole purpose of selling them at that show, but then to plant seeds for people in the future who might come back to you for those animals. And especially if they had a good experience with you at the show, you're going to be the first person who pops into their mind of, I want a yellow tree monitor. I remember seeing MJ at the show with, you know, in the future when you have babies or whatever, boom, now you have someone coming back to you. They had that positive experience and now you have a new customer out of it.
Yeah. And like I said, people don't forget, especially ones who do like going to the shows. And the Reptile Super Show is a big show. You got a lot of people, like a lot of foot traffic. The Reptile Super
Show.
But you know, one thing I just realized, like, you know, don't have, you know, expectations, don't have them, I guess, to a point where you're relying on them financially. But there's still stuff you have to do, right? Like, and one of those things I feel like is like being present at your table. And what I mean by that, I don't mean like sitting back on a chair, eating donuts, even though there's nothing wrong with donuts.
Eat a donut on your feet, people.
Oh yeah, at least on your feet, right? But I noticed one of the styles of old school vending is put your shit on the table, sit back, and maybe not give two shits and act like you don't care and they're gonna buy your snake.
Yeah.
But that's not happening nowadays, bro.
No, I mean, the days of that are at least a decade in the past. I mean, if you're, unless you have something very specific and people are coming very specifically for you, you're not going to sell anything that way.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to be at the front of the table, engaging with people, having small talk, engaging in conversations that are not going to lead to a sale. It's just completely necessary with the saturation level of these shows and the percentage of foot traffic that are actual buyers, probably being, this is just a guess, but maybe 10%, 5 to 10% compared to 15, 20 years ago, where maybe that number was 80%.
Yeah.
So
with the topic of this, going into this year, where do you see things maybe shifting towards when it comes overall reptile market talk? Like, do you feel like, things will increase? Because I would say a year ago, I feel a lot better now than I did a year ago or a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Especially because I see people spending money.
Sure.
It's not as much, but people are still spending money.
For
but
sure.
Do you feel like that will continue, or do you feel like we're still in an unpredictable stage right now and it's really hard to say?
Yeah, I think we're in an unpredictable stage. I think from, myself, people I talk to, we're definitely trending back in the right direction. But to what degree, my personal feeling was that the election kind of just halted the entire industry. People were kind of waiting to see what happened either direction. And then will we see another halt when the new administration takes over and some, the first pieces of legislation hit? Maybe that's, there's no real way to predict that. I think uncertainty can cause, in general, causes these downfalls because, face it, we're selling a luxury good. So when money's tight or when times are uncertain, the first thing that's going to go from your budget are your luxury items. And frankly, reptiles are that. So,
yeah.
But then with that said, we all love our reptiles and, many of us are continuously expanding or changing our collection. So
yeah,
it's going to come back around. At least for me, and I don't know what your perspective is on this. It felt like for a while, just overall excitement about the industry was lower.
Yeah, I mean, because last year was like the year of the call-outs. You had the whole Samson thing. I think that was a year ago. And then it started just like other big breeders were being attached to that.
Yeah.
And then you did have people like that was this all around going around, content-wise, like YouTube-wise,
sure.
all like drama.
Yeah.
So there was really nothing, like everything was all wrapped around like fucked up shit. You know what I mean? It wasn't any, so it's kind of like, why shouldn't we be excited? But I could tell you right now, like, I just had Miguel on the show for like first time in like 2 years.
Yeah.
And he's fucking pumped up. And like, it reminds me like how much he used to carry some excitement for this hobby.
Sure.
He was a huge wave of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And he kind of just like, kind of separated, not fully, but like started focusing on Mexico and doing other things where like he wasn't giving us what he was once giving us. You know? But now like he's verting back and he's getting that excitement, and which is good because I mean, if you think about overall, like he is a part of something really unique in the ball python game. Like he has stuff that he could sell.
Sure, yeah.
Not a lot of people can sell ball pythons. Right now. That's a tough subject, But there is a lot of things. I mean, look at you, Steven. Let's talk about like 5 years ago. Like you definitely had this huge dream about, being somebody who's fucking just all about working with what he's passionate about. But not only that, like scrubs 5 years ago, like to say you are producing multiple clutches of scrubs in the United States was not something talked about because nobody was really doing it.
It was not happening.
But now you're doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a lot of things to be excited for.
Sure.
Like, even for yourself personally.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping to have my best breeding year to date this coming season. But yeah, it's cool to see a project like that come full circle. And I mean, not that it has, because it still has a long way to go, but getting notoriety. I mean, having people from other countries hit me up about trying to get stuff. And, it feels really good to feel that effort kind of come full circle. And it's not just me, but, all of us who are very passionate about those snakes, really putting the effort in, laying the groundwork, planting the seeds, and, seeing something like that coming to fruition is really cool.
And one thing I do want to give you props on, because it's not easy, at the end of the day, whatever you're doing will pick up popularity and you won't be the only one being successful at it,
Sure.
right? So we all know I went obviously a couple years ago. I did a whole podcast about like how I had my Super Dwarf productions on a table at a certain price, and the guy I had a breeder loan with ended up wholesaling his half to a guy who was vending at the same show as me and was pricing him for like less than like I'm talking like 75% off of what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe because I had just sold one, and a guy came and was like, "Yo, isn't this? I see your initials. Like, are the IDs the same? Are these the same snake?" And I'm like, "Oh my god!" I had no choice but to refund the guy like $800 just so he wouldn't give me back the snake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, Steven. That man, people know I was in my feelings. I was like, "Dude, fuck this," and I was really mad. Only because we all know how much work it is keeping retics, and God bless the people who are dedicated to that project. But for me, it put a bad taste in my mouth, and that's why I was like, you know what, this won't happen. Like, meaning, if I'm gonna do this much work to produce something, like no one's gonna be able to fucking buy it off me, wholesale it. Like I'm gonna make sure, like with the chondros, right?
Yeah,
that shit is not gonna ever happen, you know.
Yeah,
but it made sure, like it did something to me where I'm like, I never forgot that feeling. I want to know what your approach is gonna be. If and then here's another thing too, right? You got people claiming United States captive born and bred when they're not, and that's also something that luckily with your animals you could tell night and day, like United States captive born and bred, wild caught. But like if you're in that situation, Steven, you drove all the way from Texas, you got your whole spread of scrubs on the table, and then you have another guy claiming to have what you have but selling it for more than half off what you're selling it. Like how do you not let that bother you first and foremost? But what do you do as somebody who's in charge of that market, you know?
Well, funny you ask, because I had a similar kind of situation happen with the scrub pythons this year. Not like a breeding loan gone wrong, but just somebody else who produced similar animals and was selling them for 25% of retail value publicly. I went through like a different, some waves of like emotions and thoughts on it. At first I was pretty upset because I'm like, damn, myself and a handful of others have worked really hard to learn how these species, what makes them click, how to breed them, and then marketing the hell out of them for years, just for somebody to come in and price captive bred animals for, sometimes half of what wild caughts were a couple years ago. As dirt cheap as possible. And what I really, the conclusion I kind of came to and what kind of ended up playing out was that the animals didn't sell.
Yeah.
They sat there for months on end. The ads were terrible. They truly looked like scams. And I think that especially with this day and age of social media, with podcasts, with YouTube, your animals are as they're the value that you bring as the person attached to the project is potentially even more valuable than the animals themselves. Obviously, your name value can only carry a project so far if the animals don't live up. If you're selling poor quality animals, sick animals, whatever, that catches up to you quick. Right. But if the product is there, if it's good quality, and you are a good quality person behind it, that's going to go so much further than anything else. Look at why, Miguel can have success with breeding ball pythons now when so many people don't, is because he's Miguel and he's laid that groundwork to be that guy, to be the guy who people want their ball pythons from. They want to be in that circle. They want to be involved with that type of stuff.
Do you remember what guy I wanted to be? And I was? Tell these people what guy I am to your first ever scrub clutch.
The first one who got one.
Yeah,
you're the first customer.
But I was adamant about that.
Yeah,
I was like, Steven, because I was worried because I knew a bunch of people were on your bumper waiting. But I was like, because first and foremost, what did you say when you got your first clutch? Nothing's for sale. You were you were a hard no.
That's
and I'm
true.
And then the only reason why I was able to cop one is because he counted 10. I said there was 11, and he's like, all right, if there's 11, I'll give you the 11th one. True or false?
That's so 90% true. That is what I said.
What? Okay.
There ended up being 11. And then I was like, I can't sell it to you, but I'll name it after you. That's how I got the name MJ.
Yeah, right.
And then later on, later on, I caved.
My bad.
Later on, I caved.
It was all about just naming it.
Yeah.
You weren't even going to sell it.
Well, no, I told you at first that I was going to sell it to you before I didn't believe there was an 11th egg. there ended up being an 11th egg and an 11th baby, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to sell you the snake, but I'll name it after you as a consolation.
I was even happy you naming it after me. I will never forget that.
Yeah.
Just because, like, you know, even to me, being somebody who, you know, gatewayed into this with ball pythons and finding out all this other cool shit, man, you have no other choice but to obsess. And you know, I think that's what we have in common. Even Brooke and whoever else in our circle, we obsess over this shit.
Sure.
Like, you know what I mean? So anytime we can get success over something we obsess with, especially with you being as young as you are and producing scrubs, I mean, I thought that was fucking. You weren't even 21 yet.
I wasn't even 20 yet.
Go! Wow,
yeah,
you were 19?
I was 19 when I had my first scrub
Oh my
clutch.
lord!
So, but
That's
yeah,
historical.
I mean, but to kind of round out the topic, I think at the end of the day, and like Tim said in the comments, you can't get mad at another man's hustle. Like,
you know, honestly, that's and I just read that too, and
true.
that's facts.
It absolutely
and honestly, like, here's the thing: I didn't go to that guy who was undercutting the pricing on what I had. I took it up. I took it the way I took it, and that's it.
You just gotta double down on what you're doing.
Yeah,
and,
no, I agree. Though.
You know,
you can't knock another dude's hustle. That dude.
You got to go harder with what you're doing, and
I agree.
Provide. You know, I didn't cut my prices. I just did what I did to try to provide. You know, to portray the value that I feel like my animals have, and people responded. So, you know, it was a good experience. It was a good experience of kind of like managing emotions around something that you care so much about, but you can't do anything about, but then also persevering and sticking with the plan anyway. And it ended up working out. So,
but what I was saying is like, it wasn't anything like whatever you just explained that you had to delegate through this year with the scrubs or last year with the scrubs. Like, it wasn't anything for you to make you want to like not work with them.
Oh no, not at all. No, it was just a frustration.
And with me, it was frustrating that like what happened there was enough for me to say I don't want this project no more, because it was all about the money. Like I was pitched a super dwarf dream by people.
Oh sure, a lot of people were, and that's really the problem is some markets are just too far gone where money is the very clear priority. And that's something that myself and you know everyone else who's really pushing these scrub pythons hard is like the pitch is never about the money. You know, there are truths to the matter of the market is only going up, so these animals will be more valuable in the future. But the pitch is what makes these animals so fun to keep, why you should keep them, you know, how they have all these different aspects of pythons that we all love kind of wrapped into one snake, the issues that come up with retics that are fixed with these snakes, yada, yada, yada. You know, the pitch is about the snakes themselves, not about the financial gain that you might have in the future. That's just kind of implied, honestly, when you're looking at a breeding project, is that, you know, if you're buying a pair of snakes, obviously you want to make your money back or you want to make, you know, a profit in the future. But that's not my pitch, at least. That's a potential side effect of what you're doing. But if I didn't love these animals as much as I did, I wouldn't have a house full of them. So.
And you know what's crazy? Like, I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a while because, you know, I feel like I get hypocritical sometimes, like laying in how much it's like a responsibility to take care of a fucking retic, like super dwarf or not. Like it's a lot, right? But then I'm like, wait a minute, like how much smaller is well, I would say girth wise a lot smaller, but length wise, like how much smaller is an adult full grown scrub, right? And then I'm like, and I'm just thinking like for somebody on the outside looking in, and I'm not here to try to beef up the scrub market at all, but there's just something
you
with
can do it if you'd like.
I'm just saying, I'm being 100% honest. Like the demeanor of a scrub versus a retic could be very calm too. But like, you know, we've seen spazzy retics, not that they're spazzy scrubs, but when you have a scrub that's well mannered or just like used to being in your environment, and it's not a wild caught first and foremost,
right? Yeah.
Because I would say I've gotten just one. It was just MJ I've gotten from you, right?
Yeah, just the one.
Man, you talk about a snake I could just go in and grab at any time.
Yeah.
Like I needed no hook with MJ.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. But then also like I don't know, like but my question is like we all hear about like big snakes being something that shouldn't be for the most common keeper, but what about for the scrubs? And how do you feel about scrubs being a bigger snake and people maybe trying to compare them to a retic and saying like, well, if you think retic's too big, then why are you keeping scrubs? Like, what would be your argument to that?
I mean, their size parameters are one of the reasons why I picked them for my project. frankly, there's no two ways about it. Big snakes are fascinating to people.
Yeah.
They're an attention grabbing, large, charismatic, fascinating creature. And there will always, there's a reason why Burmese pythons are one of the snakes that the industry is founded off of, how reticulated pythons became probably the second most valuable morph driven market in the history of the industry. And then why the super dwarf trend kind of boomed and busted, and so as quickly as it did. So I saw these as, if you want a snake that is going to get an impressive size, have the experience of owning, keeping a big snake, but just kind of at that edge of what is, okay, this is probably too much for most keepers. An average scrub python is 10 feet long and, maybe as thick around as this microphone. That's the girth of a carpet python. And it's not for everybody. It's certainly not for everybody. It's probably not a first snake for 99% of keepers, but for anybody who has those interests of retics or boas or Burmese carpet pythons, green tree pythons, Corrales boas.
If you like them bigger, scrub is like, you have to have a scrub. I feel like.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
But
shout out to Brian Fisher. He said hounds are
hell yeah.
perfect.
No, they really are, and that's like I said in the chat the other day. I think Halmaheras are going to be the most popular scrub python in 5 years, for a few reasons. One,
diversity.
Halmaheras are, in most people's eyes, kind of like a drab snake. The wild caught ones come in, they're dark, they're stressed, but some of the captive bred ones that have been produced are, they're hard to look at. Yeah, Shane Adamson's in particular, they're incredible. They stay smaller than the Amethystina. A 10-foot Halmahera is crazy. It's the size of a carpet python, an adult carpet python, and they're legal everywhere that Amethystina are banned.
That's kind of weird.
You can keep Halmaheras in Florida.
No way.
Yeah. So and
wow.
That's a huge one. So that's they have typically pretty good temperaments, and particularly the captive bred ones. So
I hope you Florida cats heard that. You could keep Halmahera scrub pythons in Florida.
Yep.
Bro, that's I don't know. I love Malukans.
Well, you can keep Malukans in Florida too.
You can?
Yeah.
Dude, that's nuts. People need to hear this in Florida. Malukans,
Halmaheras, Tannenbars.
Okay, what about Highland?
All the Amethystina complexes is on the banned list with like the berms and all that.
So, and is this kind of like going back to why Ryan Young hates fucking designers, because we are putting different species into each other? And it's like how there's different species within green tree pythons. There's different species within scrubs.
Yeah, it's the same. It's really the same thing, except the scrubs just look more different than the green trees do.
But it's almost like saying, certain like BX couldn't be here, but then Arus can.
Yeah, essentially.
That's fucking weird, bro. Who makes these rules?
People who shouldn't.
That doesn't make
and like all of the listings in Florida in particular are supposed to be to prevent the invasiveness. There's never been one account of a scrub python found in the wild in Florida.
Yeah.
So, Burmese pythons, okay, understandable. Reticulated pythons, rock pythons. If this is the logic you're going off of, there are populations. I'm not aware of retic populations, but there are obviously berms. There's a rock python population, tegus, green iguanas, Nile monitors.
I've been seeing boas in Florida.
Yeah. So like all of those species, they make sense. But a species that has never been found in the wild in Florida seems like a very arbitrary listing. Australian scrub pythons are listed. There are 2 in the entire country at a zoo. Good use of taxpayer dollars, Florida, to list Somalia kinghorn eye on your ban list when, you're more likely to have a Komodo dragon in the wild in Florida than you are an Australian scrub python. So
okay, well, since we're on the topic of this, we were talking about the blue tree monitors earlier, and I don't know. I was, Steven, your involvement in this hobby goes deeper than me, so I want to know, like, first and foremost, how do you feel about hearing about this temporary ESA listing?
Yeah.
And just because other people out there like are even scared to post their blue trees right now. Like people don't even want to let other people know they're keeping blue trees right now. Like they're deleting photos. Like it's getting pretty wild.
Well,
so what do you say?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not fully aware yet of exactly why this was done. Like, Chris and I talked about this a little bit at the end of our show last night. I mean, we were 2 hours.
Hey, watch that
change
episode,
in.
by the way. Shout out to Coach. I call him Coach.
Yes.
If you knew why he's Coach. Right.
Yes.
King
yes.
of Northerners.
Yes.
So make sure you go watch that episode last night. It was fire.
Yeah. No, it was amazing. But legitimate research done on these animals on Batanta. I don't know what's been done. I can't imagine anything that the government could look at and point to as a legitimate reason to list them or do the temporary listing. At least from an outside perspective of somebody who doesn't know the inner working details of why it was done, it does seem to me to be a case of the hobby kind of fucking itself over a little bit, because the rumor had been for probably the last 5 years or so that blue tree monitors were to be listed on CITES Appendix 1, which would mean the end of the exportation. And whether or not that should be the case, I really don't know. And if they are in that sort of decline, then a CITES Appendix 1 listing would have been the thing to do, especially considering the amount of captive breeding that's happening these days with people like Brian Susan. But worst case scenario is ESA for us, because if it was just CITES Appendix 1, that just deals with what we're able to get from an import basis. ESA means no commerce between state lines. So if you're anywhere but in Florida, Texas, or California, that basically reduces the value of your animals to close to zero. And that's pretty terrible if you've invested 5 figures into a group of blue tree monitors. But the thing that I saw that I would correlate, like I said, from somebody without additional information, is that for the last 5 years, every ad or most ads that I saw for blue tree monitors said, blue tree monitors going CITES 1 soon, get them while you can. And the price increased like 30 to 50%.
It did go up, yeah.
So I could see that as something that the government could take as, okay, these animals are being exploited by the pet trade for monetary gain, and like now we're causing decline in the population. We're causing these lizards to become endangered because the pet trade has greater demand for them. The U.S. government doesn't have the gavel on CITES that it does on the ESA, because the ESA is a United States piece of legislation where, the CITES, the I in CITES is international. It's an international agreement, and there's a committee and yada, yada, yada. So like I said, I don't know where the details all landed, but that to me is just what I could see as a potential reason for it. Just too much publicity about these animals being exploited for the pet trade, causing a decline in wild population.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. It's kind of I don't know. Like I there's definitely things we could be doing to be moving smarter to avoid some of these disasters. Yeah. Like I said, 5 years ago, that's a long time ago. Like to have a heads up.
Well, and I was almost thinking, like, where is this rumor of the CITES 1 even coming from? Like, was this just made up just so that people can sell their blue tree monitors for more?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know, but that's just something that, okay, if you're marketing these in 2019 as this, they're going CITES 1 soon, and you're still doing that in 2022, when is soon? And at what point are you the boy who cried wolf? And then at what point are you just using this to you're exploiting essentially these animals to make an extra $500 a piece on them when you're still getting them landed for the same cost? So, and that's pretty transparent when you're doing it for so long.
So as somebody keeping blue tree monitors, even somebody with ambitions to breed at some point, like what should they be doing? Like what's the best way to move from here?
Well, it depends on what temporary means in the temporary listing. And that's a piece of the information that I don't have. Could it, a potential scenario, again, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, could be temporary until they are listed on CITES Appendix 1, until the next CITES conference, and Varanus macrae are listed officially on Appendix 1, maybe then the temporary ESA ban or ESA listing is lifted. Maybe, I don't know. That would be like best case scenario for keepers. Honestly, if the intention is truly for the animals, which, as we know from the government, is never the case. But if we're looking at this through rose-colored glasses, that would be best case scenario. Is like, let's, we're going to ESA list these until they are listed on CITES Appendix 1. Then we're going to lift a temporary listing. There are plenty, more than enough blue tree monitors that are in the United States of different bloodlines to where availability of blue tree monitors should never be a problem for the history of the remainder of the history of our industry, for the future of it. So I hope that's what happens. I don't know if that's what's going to happen. I'm very curious what temporary means. I mean, if you have blue tree monitors, there's nothing to be afraid of. They're not going to come breaking down your door and take your blue tree monitors, because there's no, like, you can't retroactively apply that. At least to my knowledge, that would be insane if you could retroactively apply the Endangered Species Act. And then the bureaucratic process that would need to be gone through to prove when you got these animals, you could sooner win a lawsuit against the government than they could probably take your lizards that you purchased 2 years ago or even a month ago. So I wouldn't be deleting posts and stuff like that, but I don't know if I would necessarily be mass breeding them until I knew what was going on.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's definitely it's a weird situation, and it is scary for what else could they do this to. But then again, what does temporary mean? That word is the fulcrum of this whole thing. What does temporary mean?
What happens to the value of the blue tree if it becomes from temporary to permanent?
I mean,
like if you have blue tree monitors that you paid $3,000 for, United States captive born and bred,
yeah,
and you're like, man, my blue trees are breeding, but now blue trees are on that list.
Well, I mean, yeah, decreases them significantly, and the prices will be regional. Texas, Florida, California, you'll probably still be able to breed and sell your blue tree monitors. Maybe for some percentage of the price. But if you're in Idaho, if you're Ryan Young and you're breeding blue tree monitors,
Ryan Young breeding blue tree monitors,
then you're probably giving those away. So that's unfortunately kind of how the ESA stuff works.
So if there's a potential of the blue trees, like is there any other rumors of any other species that you've been hearing?
I didn't even know about this until I saw a post about it. So I mean, if there are, then I'm not aware of them. So, but again, my two questions are: what does temporary mean, and what science was used for this listing? Because many of these species that we get imported from, let's just to use Indonesia as an example, or the Indonesia and the surrounding areas that they collect from. I mean, very few of those animals are anything other than least concern. And the ESA is the Endangered Species Act. So you need to be able to prove, you'd hope that you'd be able to, there'd be some precedent for what is considered endangered. A green tree python, a scrub python, a blue-tongued skink, a carpet python or whatever. I mean, there's no way you can scientifically prove that these animals are in decline to the point where the collection would need to be stopped by them. So, but that's if the government's even using science for this listing. So,
all right. So I got to ask you, you and Brooke have a diverse reptile collection. Like,
sure.
There's stuff that I don't think people know that you guys have.
Probably.
What's the deal with that? Like, are you guys? The reason why I ask is like we're in an era where you don't usually randomly should be adding stuff, but you guys seem to be really like adamant about adding unique stuff.
Yeah, when the time's right.
So how do you recommend someone who's like, I want something like cool and like rare and neat to look at, but they don't really know what direction, because understand, like people come, like for instance, ball python people come into this and that's all they know, but then they want to learn more, right? Like, what's a good way, like especially at the Reptile Super Show, right? Like what's something rare you guys will be looking at maybe this weekend?
I mean,
or what are you on the hunt for?
Us in particular, will be Pituophis of sorts, the bull snakes, gopher snakes, pine snakes.
Is that a recent drive on project? Because I feel like that wasn't. Maybe it was a few years back. But I don't know. I feel like that's been a huge like push for you in the last
for sure. Yeah, it's something that I've always really liked those. I really like those animals. What was? Okay. Anyway.
Legal species.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that comment means. All right, anyway, so the Pituophis, I've always really liked those snakes, but they were always a project that I wanted to get deeper into, but like I was building my scrub collection and then I was building my venomous collection, so I just never really was able to put the focus into it, or it just kind of always was like a side project. And then I had, I had my Mexican pine snakes that I've had for a while, and I've produced them a couple of times, and they're like the perfect snake in so many ways. These snakes are bulletproof. They're beautiful. They're super variable. They're easy to keep. Almost anybody can keep one. And like some of the issues that some of the other colubrids have of babies needing tiny pinkies and stuff like that. They don't, they eat a frozen thawed fuzzy from day one. They don't go off food for periods of time. They don't spontaneously start to eat you like a Cali King. Everything about those is from a pet snake standpoint, for colubrids, is perfect. And for an experienced keeper too. I mean, like there's no level of keeper who wouldn't love keeping a pine snake or a bull snake or a gopher. So if you're a colubrid fan, if you're in a room full of arboreals, that might not be your cup of tea to have to, do maintenance more than maybe every 2 weeks or so. But yeah, I've definitely added to the collection this year. I've gotten some younger stocks, some different localities of pine snakes, some bull snakes and stuff like that. Brooke is very into those snakes as well. So, some breeders like Summer Snakes and Envy Reptiles, who will be at the show this weekend, are booths that we're definitely going to be stopping by. But to go back to the original question, it's really just keep as open of a mind as possible. If something starts to catch your attention, do as much research, watch videos, watch and listen to podcasts.
Colubrid Corruption. Shout out to JP.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't be Joey DiStefano, man. I would look him up on YouTube.
Yeah, great podcast.
Colubrid Corruption, man. That dude's doing big work with.
Yeah.
And mind you, man, like you gotta. Colubrids are for the real ones. I gotta tell you, it's just like it's not. There's nothing sensational as far as like mirage type keeping. It's like you either like it or you don't.
Yeah,
you know
sure.
What I'm saying?
Yeah, it's very much for you or it's not. To me, though, like I don't have any lizards personally. Brooke has a handful of lizards, and I guess I get my fix from them, and I get mad at the rhino iguana for shitting on the floor and stuff like that.
Well, dude, that's like a dog of yours. So
yeah,
I'm surprised that he doesn't sleep with you guys.
He would if okay. So let's say he likes to watch.
Wow, Jesus.
All right, we're on a podcast right now. But for me,
don't give these people a Krista sound check show, okay? Krista, this guy, I'm telling you right now, he didn't think Krista was on the other end for sound check, and she witnessed a lot.
Yeah.
Anyways,
all right.
we don't have to get into details.
So anyway, for me though, the colubrids kind of are like an in between of the pythons and the rattlesnakes, and then what lizards would be from like they're more active. In our kitchen area, I have my big setups, my tiger rat snakes and big display enclosures, and they're always out and about, cruising, checking stuff out. To me, they're like as close as you can get to like the behavior of a tree monitor and a snake. And that's what I really like about them. Because I scratch that itch a little bit, but I'm still just keeping snakes. They don't take nearly the amount of care that the monitors do and whatnot. So yeah, if you're looking for a more active, more engaging animal than your green tree pythons, your carpets, your whatever, but you don't want to take the full dive into lizards, from a behavioral standpoint, they're a good middle ground, and I really enjoy that about them.
Let's get back to some breeding talk. I want to ask you, what's been your favorite type of what's been working for you the most when it comes to cycling?
Yeah, I mean, well, the main thing I'll say honestly is just paying a lot of attention to it.
Tell me, what do you mean by paying attention? Like,
what are you looking at? So, a few years ago, my life looked very different than it does now. I had a much busier life, many more responsibilities, many more people that relied on me,
He had no
etc.
Brooke, so he's miserable. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes. And with going out on my own, doing reptiles full time, I'm like, I have no choice but to give everything I have to doing this. And now that I live with my animals again, that's really possible. Where before, when I lived off site from my animals, you're observing things from, let's say 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or whatever, 10 to 7, whatever that day might be for you. And frankly, with snakes, a lot of stuff happens between the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. Or days when I'm shipping rodents all day or cleaning rodents all day or running errands or whatever. I'm not paying attention.
Sleeping, they're doing shit.
Yeah, seriously. So, having those hours that I was taking up with other activities now being applied to more in-depth care of the animals, walking through my scrub room sometimes 10, 20 times a day just to look at stuff, noticing behavioral patterns. Like recently, it's during brumation, but I was noticing that my Mangshan vipers were being extremely active at night. And night after night after night. And this is something I would not have been able to observe otherwise if my life was structured differently. In my attempts to try to breed these animals, something like that's extremely important. Of okay, this time of year with these stimulus, this is how these animals behaved. It's not breeding season yet, but what does this mean? They're not doing it for no reason.
Right.
But then just specific cycling, temperature, food, humidity, light, doing it all. For different species in different ways. I have basically half of my permanent collection are brumating species. So having, rooms that are cold and for the most part dark for months on end, managing those rooms, making sure they're staying cold enough, being in Texas where getting cold is the issue as opposed to getting warm, has been a transition. Or now, being in Texas compared to being in the Midwest, getting humid is now the concern as opposed to keeping it drier or, keeping it to where it's not going to get moldy and mildewy from stagnation. It's been just a process of being constantly on top of things, constantly checking and tweaking, putting those snakes down for brumation the day I need to, instead of putting it off for 3 weeks and, oh, fuck, I need to do it today. Let me clean the tub real quick. Oh, cutting corners and slipping up on things. That's what I've been really trying to focus on, is just having my plans and really sticking to them in ways that I haven't done in the past.
Yeah. Obviously where I live, I'll breed anything I can throughout the whole year, but I'm wondering if that's kind of like if that eventually is going to be something I won't want to do, because, I think in a perfect world, right? Like in I guess an ideal world of what you should be breeding should also have a strict moment of like there's food and there's no food.
Sure.
Right. Versus just feeding 24/7 all year round. Right.
That works with some species, and there are very few of them.
That's what I'm right. Like there's, and mind you, like I mainly got this idea in my head because Mark Bailey, he's come to my room and like, yo, why are you feeding? Like, I'm not feeding shit right now. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not feeding? Because he's seasonal. Like he has a cutoff point, right? And even with Bill Stiegel, he has a cutoff point, and that's because he wants everything to go around the same time. Yeah. But with as much as we have, and much like how do you know like those things are even meant to go during that time? Because they're and I know you could really control it sometimes with food, but really like I don't know.
Food and seasonality. I think fortunately with a lot of the stuff that we keep, there's a general knowledge of what season that they breed in most effectively. And then you can also manipulate that yourself a little bit. But it's the fact that a lot of, pythons and boas, their cycle is decrease in temperature, decrease in availability of food, breeding activity. Once that all comes back, that's kind of when they develop and everything starts happening for them. So that for us in the US is going to be fall into winter. So you can plan your year accordingly just to the seasonality. You're not having to force rooms to do things that naturally that they wouldn't at certain times of year. If I was trying to cool stuff down in May, I would have an extraordinarily hard time.
Yeah. Right.
And then, snakes go when they go as well. And if you're really on top of tracking your females, I'm lucky with scrub pythons. They're very easy to palpate, and I've gotten pretty good at palpating over the years. And then also noticing behavioral differences.
I got a question. Are you still going through a lot of like follicle development and then they just disappear with scrubs? Like, are you still seeing?
Sure, yeah, of course.
What do you think that is? Like, are you not hitting them at the right time, or like what do you think it could be about? Like, holy shit, look at those follicles, and then
yeah, I think it could be a handful of things. I think with like a wild caught animal, probably just some sort of lack of security.
Like within the female where she just doesn't want to go?
Probably some of that. Hitting him at the wrong, like getting a male in there too late, which for me really is an issue because I definitely err on the side of pairing early.
Yeah. What about multiple males? Is that something that you feel like is necessary to scrubs?
Definitely not necessary. I guess I've had 20 clutches of scrub pythons and I've never done it. And I've done it kind of inadvertently a few times where I'll start with one male and then switch to another male. But typically that's because that first male wasn't doing anything with that female, and then the second male got the job done. I have one project right now that I'm trying multiple males with, purely just for the sake of I have more males than I do females. But with a lot of stuff, like with the bar neck projects,
I'm gonna get some.
Yeah. With the bar neck projects in particular, I have very specific pairings that I want to make. So if I was rotating 4 males to a bar neck female, or having 2 males in the enclosure at the same time, then I might not hit that pairing that I actually wanted to do for my line breeding goals that I had with those snakes. So like, for instance, like with what Scott Flood does with the Boland's pythons. Hell yeah.
This is good. This is the wrap up topic. We're gonna be talking about Malukan. So go ahead.
Yeah, let's do it. So like what Scott's doing with the Boland's pythons, with a snake like that, the goal is to just make babies. And I bet he probably has, I really want this male to breed this female, but the goal, like for me with like the Malukan scrubs, perfect topic. MJ has the male out right now. I don't care who gets who. I just want babies to happen. So,
yeah,
I'll throw anything at the wall, but like with the bar neck pairing, there are certain females I have that I'd rather the right male breed her. Like if that's one option and the other option is her not breed at all, I don't want option 3 to be her bred to some male that's incompatible that'll throw babies that I'm not looking to produce. I'd rather wait on that female for the right male to be ready or whatever. So it all just depends on kind of how you're approaching a specific project. But when it comes to a snake like this, whatever works.
I brought this snake out because I want to know. I want to know from Steven, when will we see some Stephen Kush produce Malukan scrub pythons?
I mean, hopefully as soon as possible. I've been trying for 4 years now without success. So,
and can we talk about like what is it that you're thinking about? Like why? Because obviously, I mean, this is a huge box to check off on your resume.
Oh, for sure.
So
yeah, that's my biggest goal.
And also, like, first and foremost, a lot of people can't produce. I mean, haven't produced these. Like,
yeah.
It's not something that happens quite often. So
sure.
Let's kind of talk about what do you think it is, and how many pairings do you have of Malukans?
So I mean, well, right now I have one adult female. So
you have one adult female right now?
Yeah. Really? I've always been male heavy. I've had a very hard time finding females. So I think one of my issues was I acquired some adult females, and they were both they were fed a lot more than I would have to get to that point. So I had to, especially with one of them, go on like a multi-year plan of getting them thinned out.
That's hard to do on a snake.
Very hard to do.
That's why it's almost too late for innocence sometimes. Like if you get
it can be
they're too old.
Yeah. So I have my sibling of this guy right here, and I think she'll be my best shot at it once in a couple of years when she's ready. I've had 2 slug clutches of Malukans, and I kind of equate that to the females being overweight. Whatever it takes for me.
So at this point, you just have the one that's not quite old enough yet.
Oh no, she's old enough. She just needs.
So this guy's sister's old enough.
Oh no, that's another. So
right.
my wild caught adult female.
Oh right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like to talk about it too much anymore because
sorry.
No, it's fine. Like I don't mind talking about it, but I'm like, at some point I just need to show results and not say anything until then.
Yeah.
So
all right.
But I do hope that I can check a few new boxes this year. I guess that's what I'll say. I have 4 localities under my belt now, and I could double that this year, potentially, at least add 2 or 3 to it. So,
okay, last question. Why would you say this snake could give Boland's a run for its money?
Well, unfortunately, the way that the color's picking up on the video, it's washed it out.
By the way, this thing, it doesn't look as good. This thing is gold as shit.
Yeah, I mean they're LA Lakers colors, and like, you know, that's what they are. They're these vibrant gold and purple snakes. They're big, they're impressive. They have giant meaty heads, paws when they're adults. They're hell yeah. I mean they have a great variety of pattern. You know, striped animals, kind of somewhat banded animals like this, patternless, and this is how they act. Their
demeanor's so calm.
They're super calm.
They don't musk.
No, they don't. They're the best. They're really. But Barnecks are my favorite, but primarily because of, I mean, one, they're incredible snakes, but I love the variety and the line breeding potential with Barnecks. But from a species standpoint, I don't know. I don't know if you beat Malukans with any snake in the entire world. I'm honestly going to say, from a physicality standpoint, I like them more than Boland's pythons. I want to keep Boland's pythons, and I'm too poor for Boland's pythons. So, you know, if Scott or Mark Miles want a bunch of scrub pythons in exchange for some baby Boland's eventually,
I think
you know,
Scott might.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit, and I'm like, oh shoot, I might need to produce a lot of Malukans before I can get some Boland's out of Scott. But I don't know. To me, they're like the pinnacle of the snake world. Honestly, they really are. Yeah, man. And honestly, I have you to thank on why my obsessions is what. And like I said, I know I don't keep all the scrubs I used to keep. Yeah. But I still love the Barnecks. I still the Halmaheras. I know I'm going to revisit someday. Yeah. And the Barnecks. Like, I mean. Once you like a scrub, you like them all. They're fucking all amazing. Yeah, they're all sick in their own way. It's hard to compare them to another complex of snakes. Honestly, like from that standpoint, the closest comparison would probably be carpet pythons, with how different the different types and subspecies are from each other. Like with green trees, they're different, but they're subtle differences. You know, you have a green based snake with either different amounts of white or blue in it, or yellow. With scrub pythons, you have gold and black and shades of brown and silver, orange, purple, blue. I mean, it sucks because this snake is getting picked up like a sunset ball python right now. It's terrible. Like an old aging sunset. Like something that gets stolen off a table. Oof. I'm just kidding. Pause. Listen, guys, this has been a great episode, and we only want to do an hour because we have sushi reservations. We're going to go fucking, you know, Steven's going to smoke some dabs, and then we're going to go, you know, me sushi. Just doing dabs and freaking the fuck out for the next 48 hours. Why? So, before we let people go tonight, why should people go to the Reptile Super Show this weekend? Because it is the best reptile show in the entire country. Because we're going to be there for one. That's enough of a reason. And because hundreds and thousands of other people who are, you know, as obsessed with this industry, the hobby of these animals as we are, will be there too. So it's the place to be, and this is the weekend to be there. It's very unfortunate with everything happening with the fires, but I hope that the show is still what it's supposed to be. Oh, we're getting a phone call right now. Let's hear what Trump has to say about Reptile Super Show. What a show. Maybe the best show in the entire country. Some say the best show in the world. I say the best show. Lots of great breeders. Nothing like the trap. I was at the trap today. What a trap. Best trap. Not as good as my trap, but they can't all be like my trap. Great chondros. Wow, I was like, look at those green snakes. They're so green. Look at those basins. Wow, look at the diamonds. They look like the diamonds I put on Melania's hand. A very expensive ring, millions and millions of dollars. That goes without saying. What a great show. Wonderful show where I'm going to be there taking pictures, signing autographs. I will sign your scrub python for you. Donald J. Trump, president of the scrubs. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, go to the show. Thank you so much, Donald Trump, and let's get to tonight's commercials. Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Very
Very excited to announce today's sponsor, and of course, it's the one and only Reptile Super Show, happening January 11th and 12th, 2025 at the Pomona Convention Center. This is going to be quite the time. I hope you guys are ready. I'm going to be vending. I have plenty of friends flying into town. Most diversity display of reptiles. There's no better show to go to than the Reptile Super Show, happening January 11th and 12th, Pomona, California. Head over to reptilesupershow.com, get your tickets, make sure you place your hotel reservations if needed. There's directions, all sorts of amazing stuff on the website. You can also follow Reptile Super Show on Instagram to be on top of all current events. But no matter what, I will see you at the Reptile Super Show 2025. Thank you so much, Rami, for throwing such an amazing show. It is the best show, and that's why you got to be there. I'll see you guys at the next Reptile Super Show. Cheers! Shout out to today's sponsor, and that is the Cocoa Dude, #1 chipper substrate in the game. Everything you see behind me, all my emerald tree boas, my green tree pythons, are all over that beautiful cocoa chip over at CocoaDude.com. Go to CocoaDude.com, place your order. I prefer the Cocoa to Go. It's already broken down, less dust, the chunks are perfect. But yes, I like the Cocoa to Go. No matter what your total is in your cart, if you put in TrapFam25 in the promo code, you are now going to get 25% off your entire order. Thank you so much, the Cocoa Dude, for doing that for all my trappers. Again, #1 substrate in the game. Less duck sheds, less dust. It's the best place to be, and that's the Cocoa Dude. Again, CocoaDude.com. Put in promo code TrapFam25 and get yourself 25% off the entire order. Thank you so much, Cocoa Dude. Cheers. All right, guys, episode 585 in the books. I'll see you this weekend at the Reptile Super Show, and we're out. Cheers.